we are here on day 64 of the 100 Days of Narration Challenge. Hello, my name is Edwin Tiong, and if you guessed yesterday's book, or if you were here yesterday to guess yesterday's book, Mystery Book Challenge, then you might realize that this week, or you may not realize, actually, it might be a complete mystery. A complete mystery. I was trying to think of another word for mystery, but I couldn't think of anything at a time. Enigma. A complete enigma for what I'm planning to do this week. This week is going to be Roald Dahl week, basically. So that's what this week is going to be all about, Roald Dahl. And yesterday's book was, of course, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which was one of my favorite books growing up as a kid. Well, I say that, but I don't actually remember reading. I mean, it's been such a long time since I've read these books. I got these books as a gift when I was 1986, from relatives, the Lees. Only I have a whole bunch of Lees, so I'm not sure which Lee it was. I can't remember that at all. But yeah, these are in book format. And, yeah. Australia, 1986. Yeah, that was before I moved to Australia even. Still living in Malaysia at the time, so it was really nice to get this. Anyway, so yesterday was Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. So for today, I thought I'd do James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. Of course, Roald Dahl, because that's what we're doing this week. Now, what is it about this book? What is it about this book? Well, first of all, it's been turned into a film. Several times, I think. Or is it just once? I don't remember. Maybe there was a TV series as well? I don't know. I know there was the stop-motion animation film. But was there a TV series? I'm sure they would be. I'm sure they would be. Anyway, let's have a if you're not familiar with the whole concept, it's about James and a giant peach. That's kind of what it's about. Well, that's all what it's about. But let me read the blurb on the back. Something is about to happen, James told himself. Something peculiar is about to happen any moment. James had lived with his two beastly aunts ever since the day his parents were eaten up outside London Zoo by an angry escaped rhinoceros. Aunt Spoonge? I don't know what I was doing there. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker were really horrible people. They made poor James's life a misery. They made him do all the hard work, and they never allowed him to go further than the garden fence. Then, something very peculiar happened. Something magic that was to completely change James's miserable existence and take him on a most amazing and unbelievable journey. I'd quite completely forgotten how dark some of these. I mean, a lot of Roald Dahl's children's books are fairly bleak and dark and horrible, and adults are the most horrid things in his books. It's quite it's a little bit scary, actually. You wouldn't get that in books these days. Well, maybe you do, occasionally, here and there. So let's do the whole flip through randomly. Oh, you missed that sound, don't you? You've missed that sound. Flip, flippy, 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 flip, 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 flip. Yeah, we'll start from page 34. It's in the middle of a chapter, but that's better than being in the middle of a sentence. But let's see. Let's have a look, shall we? So did I, the ladybird said. I swallowed 3, Centipede cried. But who's telling this story anyway? Don't interrupt. It's too late to tell stories now, the old green grasshopper announced. It's time to go to sleep. I need to solidify the voices for these characters first. I guess the old green grasshopper is going to sound a little bit like this. And the ladybird, because I don't know how to do ladies' voices, I guess I'll just do it high-pitched, enthusiastic voice. And centipede, centipede, I don't know. I refuse to sleep in my boots. Why not? Why not, you know? I refuse to sleep in my boots, the centipede cried. How many more are there to come off, James? I think I've done about 20 so far, James told him. That leaves 80 to go, the centipede said. Another voice, the earthworm. 22, not 80, shrieked the earthworm. He's lying again. The centipede roared with laughter. Stop pulling the earthworm's leg, the ladybug said. This sent the centipede into hysterics. Pulling his leg? He cried, wriggling with glee and pointing at the earthworm. Which leg am I pulling? You tell me that. Ha ha! James decided that he rather liked the centipede. He was obviously a rascal, but what a change it was to hear somebody laughing once in a while. He had never heard Aunt Sponge or Aunt Spiker laughing aloud in all the time he had been with them. We really must get some sleep, said old green grasshopper said. What? Oh, sorry, there was no set at the beginning. The old green grasshopper said, We've got a rough day, tough day ahead of us tomorrow, so would you be kind enough, Miss Spider, to make the beds? A few minutes later, Miss Spider had made the first bed. It was hanging from the ceiling, suspended by a rope of threads at either end, so that it actually looked more like a hammock than a bed. But it was a magnificent affair, and the stuff that it was made of shimmered like silk in the pale light. I do hope you'll find it comfortable, Miss Spider said to old green grasshopper. I made it as soft and silky as I possibly could. I spun it with gossamer. That's a much better quality thread than the one I use for my own web. Thank you so much, my dear lady, the old green grasshopper said, climbing into the hammock. Ah, this is just what I needed. Good night, everybody. Good night. Then Miss Spider spun the next hammock, and the ladybird got in. After that, she spun a long one for the centipede, and an even longer one for the earthworm. How do you like your bed? She said to James when it came to his turn. Hard or soft? I like it soft, thank you very much, James answered. For goodness sake, stop staring around the room and get on with my boots, the centipede said. You and I are never gonna get any sleep at this rate, and it's going, not gonna. Never going to get any sleep at this rate, and kindly line them up neatly in pairs as you take them off. Don't just throw them over your shoulder. James worked frantically on the centipede's boots. Each one had laces that had to be untied and loosened before it could be pulled off. And to make matters worse, all the laces were tied up in the most terribly complicated knots that had to be unpicked with fingernails. And it's not terribly, it's just terrible. The most terrible complicated knots. Most terrible complicated knots? Wouldn't it be terribly complicated knots? Maybe complicated terrible knots, but whatever. The most terrible complicated knots that had to be unpicked with fingernails. It was just awful. It took about 2 hours, and by the time James had pulled off the last boot of all, and had them lined up in a row on the floor, 21 pairs altogether, the centipede was fast asleep. Wake up, centipede, whispered James, giving him a gentle dig in the stomach. It's time for bed. Thank you, my dear child, the centipede said, opening his eyes. Then he got down off the sofa and ambled across the room and crawled into his hammock. James got into his own hammock, and oh, how soft and comfortable it was, compared with the hard, bare boards that his aunts had always made him sleep upon at home. Lights out, said the centipede drowsily. Nothing happened. Turn out the light, he called, raising his voice. James glanced around the room, wondering which of the others he might be talking to, but they were all asleep. The old green grasshopper was snoring loudly through his nose. The ladybird was making whistling noises as she breathed, and the earthworm was coiled up like a spring at one end of his hammock, wheezing and blowing through his open mouth. As for Miss Spider, she had made a lovely web for herself across one corner of the room, and James could see her crouching right at the very center of it, mumbling softly in her dreams.
"I said turn out the light!"
shouted the centipede angrily. Are you talking to me?" James asked him.
"Of course I'm not talking to you, you ass!" the centipede answered. "That crazy glowworm has gone to sleep with the light on!"
For the first time since entering the room, James glanced up at the ceiling, and there he saw a most extraordinary sight. Something that looked like a gigantic fly without wings, it was at least 3 feet long, was standing upside down upon its 6 legs in the middle of the ceiling, and the tail end of this creature seemed to be literally on fire. Let's try that again. And the tail end of this creature seemed to be literally on fire. A brilliant greenish glow, a brilliant greenish light as bright as the brightest electric bulb, was shining out of its tail, and lighting up the whole room. "Is that a glowworm?" asked James, staring at the light. It doesn't look like a worm of any sort to me."
"Of course it's a glowworm," the centipede answered. "At least that's what she calls herself, although actually you are quite right. She isn't really a worm at all. Glowworms are never worms. They are simply lady fireflies without wings. Wake up, you lazy beast!"
But the glowworm didn't stir. So the centipede reached out of his hammock and picked up one of his boots from the floor.
"Put out that wretched light!"
he shouted, hurling the boot up at the ceiling. The glowworm slowly opened one eye and stared at the centipede.
"There is no need to be rude," she said coldly. "All in good time." Come on, come on!" shouted the centipede, "or I'll put it out for you."
"Oh, hello, James," the glowworm said, looking down and giving James a little wave and a smile.
"I didn't see you come in. Welcome, my dear boy, welcome, and good night."
Then click, and went out. And out went the light. James Henry Trotter lay there in the darkness with his eyes wide open, listening to the strange sleeping noises that the creatures were making all around him, and wondering what on earth was going to happen to him in the morning. Already he was beginning to like his new friends very much. They were not nearly as horrible as they looked. Terrible, the word is terrible. They were not nearly as terrible as they looked. In fact, they weren't really terrible at all. They seemed extremely kind and helpful in spite of all the shouting and arguing that went on between them. "Good night, old green grasshopper," he whispered. "Good night, ladybug. Good night, Miss Spider." But before he could get through them all, he had fallen asleep. Should I keep reading? I think I can do one more chapter. These are really short chapters and short pages, so let's just keep reading. Chapter 14. Oh, by the way, that was chapter 13. There was a break there, but I just kept going.
"We're off!" someone was shouting. "We're off at last!"
James woke up with a jump and looked about him. The creatures were all out of their hammocks and moving excitedly around the room. Suddenly, the floor gave a huge heave, gave a great heave as though an earthquake were taking place.
"Here we go!"
shouted the old green grasshopper, hopping up and down with excitement.
"Hold on tight!"
"What's happening?" cried James, leaping out of his hammock. "What's going on?" The ladybird, who was obviously a kind and gentle creature, came over and stood beside him. "In case you don't know it," she said, "we are about to depart forever from the top of this ghastly hill that we've made all this... We are about to depart forever from the top of this ghastly hill that we've all been living on for so long. We are about to roll away inside this great big beautiful peach to a land of what?" "Never you mind," said the ladybird, "but nothing could be worse than this desolate hilltop and those 2 repulsive aunts of yours." those two repulsive aunts of yours. Hear, hear, they all shouted. Hear, hear. You may not have noticed it, the ladybird went on, but the whole garden, even before it reaches the steep edge of the hill, happens to be on a steep slope. And therefore, the only thing that has been stopping this peach from rolling right away, away right from the beginning, from rolling away right from the beginning. Let's try this again. Jeez, it's a long sentence, sorry. And therefore, the only thing that has been stopping this peach from rolling away right away. Duh, I'm doing it again. And therefore, the only thing that has been stopping this peach from rolling away right from the beginning was the thick stem attaching it to the tree. Break the stem, and off we go. Oh, Miss Spider. What voice did I use for Miss Spider? Watch it! Watch it! Watch it! I gave her the same voice as the glowworm, didn't I? Watch it! Cried Miss Spider as the room gave another violent lurch. Here we go! Not quite! Not quite! At this moment, continued the ladybird, our centipede. Oh, okay, so that's the centipede outside. Not quite! Not quite! At this moment, continued the ladybird, our centipede, who has a pair of jaws as sharp as razors, is up there on top of the peach, nibbling away at that stem. God, I need to take some anti-burp formula. Is there anti-burp formula? I don't know. In fact, he must be nearly through it, as you can tell from the way we've been lurching about. Would you like me to take you under my wing so that you won't fall over when we start rolling? That's very kind of you, said James, but I think I'll be all right. Just then, the centipede stuck his grinning face through a hole in the ceiling. Just then, the centipede stuck his grinning face through a hole in the ceiling and shouted, I've done it! We're off! We're off, the others cried. We're off! A journey begins, shouted the centipede. And who knows where it will end, muttered the earthworm. If you have anything to do with it, it can only mean trouble. That doesn't sound like muttering, but whatever. Nonsense, said the ladybird. We are now about to visit the most marvelous places and see the most wonderful things. Isn't that so, centipede? There's no knowing what we shall see. Okay, got the centipede's voice back, cried the centipede. We may see a creature with 49 heads who lives in the desolate snow, and whenever he catches a cold which he dreads, he has 49 noses to blow. We may see the venomous pink-spotted scrunch who can chew up a man with one bite. It likes to eat 5 of them roasted for lunch and 18 for its supper at night. We may see a dragon, and nobody knows that we won't see a unicorn there. We may see a terrible monster with toes growing out of the tufts of his hair. We may see the sweet little bitty bright hen, so playful, so kind and well-bred, and such beautiful eggs, you just boil them and then they explode and they blow off your head. A new and a nocerous. I don't know what that is. A new and a nocerous, surely you'll see, and that enormous and norable gnat. The joke being that Normus has a G and Norable has a G in front of it, so it's G-N, G-enormous and G-norable gnat, Gnat. Who sting when it stings you goes in the knee. Who sting when it stings you goes in at the knee and comes out through the top of your hat. We may even get lost and be frozen by frost. We may die in an earthquake or tremor. Or nastier still, we may even be tossed on the horns of a furious dilemma. But who cares? Let us go from this horrible hill. Let us roll. Let us bowl. Let us plunge. Sorry, it's just plunge. Let us plunge. Let's go rolling and bowling and spinning until we're away from old Spiker and Sponge. That was meant to be a song and dance number, but I don't know how to do song and dance. 1 second later, slowly, insidiously, oh, most gently, the great peach started to lean forward and steal into motion. The whole room began to tilt over, and all the furniture went sliding across the floor and crashed against the far wall. So did James and the ladybird and the old green grasshopper and Miss Spider and the earthworm, also the centipede, who had just come slithering quickly down the wall. And, yeah, we'll stop there. That was a good number of pages to read. So, yeah, that was, day 64 of the 100 Days of Narration Challenge, and that was James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. I hope you enjoyed that, and be sure to stick around for more of me reading more Roald Dahl stuff. It's not all going to be his children's books, but it's mostly going to be his books written for children, because I find them quite fascinating and quite awesome. And they're all actual books this time, so you can actually hear me flipping through the books. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you tomorrow. Hey, you seem like a cool, wonderful, and/or awesome individual with impeccable taste in voice actors. So why not follow me on Facebook or Twitter? You can keep up with the latest projects I'm in, or that my friends are in, or that you could be in, because I occasionally post links to open editions to various projects that require voice acting out there, or that nobody's in, but they're interesting projects nonetheless that you may also find interesting. Also, lots of random thoughts about whatever's on my mind at that particular moment. Usually it's about food or video games or foodie video games. Anyway, you can follow me on Facebook at OmadonVA or Twitter at Omadon. Hope to see you there.